I want to open our discussion of heirlooms and memories with a short documentary film entitled Gefilte Fish. It's a wonderful short film. The filmmaker is actually the youngest of the three women depicted in the film. There's a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter. The daughter's a college student, and she made this film as a college project. I find it a wonderful opening to conversation about memory and also about heirlooms, because as you'll see, there are a couple of heirlooms in this story. And so, if all the technology works, in just a minute, we will be listening to Gefilte Fish.
Well, it's a healthy food, and it's very nourishing, and it's very tasty.
It's like hunks of white, well, not quite white, but dirty white meat that are like hung together in balls, and it smells like fish.
Traditional dish that you have for all happy occasions, like the New Year and Passover.
It doesn't even have the consistency of fish. It's not flaky. It's just kind of all mashed together. It looks like a matzo ball that's kind of wet and mushy.
It's a traditional dish and typical Jewish, but seems like everybody likes it. A lot of the Gentiles like it too.
And that's gefilte fish. But, you know, I think if you put it in water, it would never float. It certainly can't swim.
I called just when I left an order. My name is Marcy Silverstein.
Okay.
And I wanted like 6 pounds of fish. I'm going to make gefilte fish, so I need white fish, a little bit of trout, and buffalo belly. And does the fish come in fresh today?
It did.
Oh, great, great.
When I was a small child, we would have gefilte fish on Friday night. So I used to go with my mother to the fish market because we always had to get a live fish to be sure that it was fresh.
I'm going to make some gefilte fish for you, but I'm going to begin with filling up a pot with water and putting cinnamon in it and cooking cinnamon on the stove because the smell of fish is so atrocious, so we all don't gag. I will put the cinnamon in the pot on the back burner. That's number one. That's the first thing about making fish.
Well, I don't make gefilte fish very often. As a matter of fact, I've never made it all my entire life. I usually don't have to because my grandma usually makes it, or now that my grandma is too old and she doesn't have the energy and physically she can't make it, my mom makes it.
I bought the fish yesterday at the fish market, and I'm going to clean the bones and clean out the heads of the fish and take out the eyes if I don't pass out. And I'm going to put those, and I'm going to make a stock that I put the fish balls on eventually. Here, let me get the fish.
If I ever need any, or want to have some with dinner or for a holiday, I usually take it from the refrigerator and from the jar. And this is the best kind, I think. You get it at the delicatessen, managed to best gefilte fish.
Anyway, this is part of, this is like one of the secrets. This is where you get the good taste.
The fish bones and the fish head gave the fish an added flavor. And that was never thrown out. We always had to use that.
I think this is Mr. Trout. Oh my goodness.
Of course, we had to clean the head out. We had to take the eyes out. We had to take the inside of the mouth out.
Some people don't use eyes, and I mean fish heads, and I sort of understand why. Right now, I vote for against it.
Now, there are a lot of reasons why I don't make it myself.
Boil a little bit, but the smell is great. I like it. It's like apple pie.
It's mostly the time element involved. And to be honest, I can't stand the smell of fish in the kitchen when you're making it. And I think if I ever made it, I would never eat it.
See, I'm putting the fish in the pot right now. Then I'm going to cut up onions and carrots and I'm going to put in some water, and I'm going to make a stock or cook that for 15 minutes, I don't think.
Well, first we had to get a big kettle, and we'd line it with sliced onions, and then slice some carrots and celery and parsley.
But when I make it, when I prepare it, meaning prepare it for if I'm going to serve it to people, I always serve it the same way. I always put it on a plate with a nice little bed of lettuce because gives a lot of color.
The grandparents and the aunts and everybody, the older people that used to do it, used to have to do it with a wooden bowl and with a chopper and with hand grinders and electric grinders, and I feel very fortunate. I don't know if I could have made fish with all that work. I like to hope I would.
The younger generations are making it, but they don't. Use the old-fashioned way. They use the newfangled way with the Cuisinart and with the part that you don't have to chop.
Learn from Julia Child. Take a piece of romaine lettuce, you flatten it out, and you put it on a jar like this. You take your jar of gefilte fish, and you open it. Well, it's sometimes hard to open. And
Ready? Okay. This is the chopping bowl that I use, that I've had for the last 65 years. And it's still good. And this is the chopper that I had. This belonged to my mother-in-law, and she passed it on to me. And this is about 100 years old because she probably brought it from the old country. And we would chop and chop and chop that fish. Chop, chop, chop. And we chopped until the fish stuck to the chopper. And sometimes we had to chop for over an hour. And this belonged to my mother-in-law, and she passed it on to me. And I will probably pass it on to one of my granddaughters, if she'll want to make gefilte fish.
this usually works. It works with peanut butter.
But that later on in years after I was married, was making the fish myself, I got a food chopper. It was one of these choppers that you would have to attach it to the table or to a chair, and then we would grind the fish.
Let me get some of the bones out now. Here, you can see some on here especially. Look at bone. Some of the bones get ground up and you don't know. I know it sounds bad, but it's got calcium in them. They're not bad for you.
I got it. Yay! Yay!
This has just been ground for the first time. And this is the trout, the pink, and you can see the whitefish. And it's the blend of the three different fishes, the whitefish and the buffalo and the trout, that give the fish the consistency. I've only Cuisinarted the fish one time.
Ugh. Here we go.
This is the chopper. This is the electric chopper. This part. It goes. It's an attachment to my can opener, and when I put the fish right in here, and I push it down with this.
Now, after I take all of this out, I'm going to wash out the bowl and dry it and start from scratch again. And after I run it through one more time, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the mozzarella and the hard and the fresh eggs in.
The chopped fish, hard-boiled eggs, and raw eggs, and onions, and salt and pepper, all chopped together. Those are the ingredients for it.
Water, carp, mullet, whitefish, pike, egg whites, matzo meal, onions, salt, carrageenan, vegetable gum, natural flavor, monosodium glutamate.
ounce of milk. Put egg in. The ice water for fluffiness.
Usually in a family, and traditionally, you have, there's always just one fish maker, gefilte fish maker in the family.
Very good. I'm going to make them into little balls and drop them into the boiling broth.
The recipe is usually passed down from generation, or maybe a little bit of, a mixture of several other recipes. And I'm sure that eventually I will be the one who will be making in the family.
I'm making the balls about this size, a little bit bigger than a golf ball and smaller than a tennis ball.
You want small ones, you make them smaller. If you want bigger, you use more of the fish. And you round it up, and you put that in your pot.
And you let it cook for about an hour and a half, and then you come out with these, I hope, these beautiful white fish balls.
One of the main reasons why I have to take my gefilte fish out of the jar is because my lifestyle is so significantly different than that of my grandmother's or my mom's that it's really a necessity.
My mother-in-law started making gefilte fish a couple of years ago, and since nobody else made gefilte fish in the family, I'm the one who picked up, I guess, the tradition.
I had to stop making it because my health wouldn't permit it. That's why I stopped. Right?
I guess when I get too old to make gefilte fish, I hope one of my girls will start making gefilte fish. So the tradition goes on.
But it really wouldn't surprise me if if even when it was my turn to learn how to make it, if I still resorted to using my Manischewitz gefilte fish, because they're just a balancing of things, and you have to decide which is more important.
I didn't count exactly, but I think I made about 20. I'm going to put them out here and let them cool overnight. See? This is gefilte fish ball.
I think it's better if you make it yourself. I think homemade gefilte fish, I think, is better than the bought fish, but it's still very, very good.
I know there's someday that I am going to want to learn how to make it from scratch. And the reason why is really just for the sake of tradition. There's no other reason I can think of.
I guess I could have bought the fish myself and doctored it up from a jar, like a lot of people do, and it would have been easier, and it would have probably tasted as good. Well, not quite as good, let's be honest. But I think that making fish yourself is maybe a test of love, or it just makes me feel good.
Well, I think that my gefilte fish is very good. I think it's one of the best, and my family all like it, especially my daughter-in-laws.
Now this is a piece of gefilte fish that my mother sent over for me. She made it herself, regular homemade, the whole thing. Now, the thing is, that's kind of neat about gefilte fish from the jar is that it doesn't look any different at all than homemade fish. All you need to do is put on a little piece of lettuce, like this. Gotta decorate with a little parsley, a radish, and of course, the proverbial carrot that goes right on top. And there you have it. It looks like it's homemade. It tastes just as good, and it's a lot easier.
It's a fascinating tale because you wonder what will happen to that bowl? What will happen to that chopper? Right? These go back 100 years, 65 years she's had this bowl. She spent an hour or more every Passover chopping to make the food as a sign of love, and don't you forget it. But will her daughter take it? She might take it. Will her granddaughter use it? Maybe not, or she might use it for something else. It might be a salad bowl now. It might be, you could readapt it to something else. But I think if she left it to her granddaughter would take it. She wouldn't throw it away. She wouldn't sell it in a garage sale. She would hold on to it because it would be like holding on to her grandmother in some meaningful way. I often learn from our Sunday school students. We have two activities that our 4th and 5th grade class have done historically that I found really insightful. One was an exercise of becoming an immigrant. If you were living in the old country and you had to move, but you could only take 5 things, what would you take? And they have a bag of 20 things that they have to choose from. And some of the students will choose a family photo, a Kiddush cup, an heirloom, because they don't want to forget where they're coming from, even if it means they don't bring socks or some more practical item. And the other activity that our 4th and 5th grade class has done is to do an heirloom museum, where each of the students brings in a family heirloom and then becomes the museum docent, who tells you the story behind it, to whom it belonged, when it became part of the family, what it's used for. And in our congregation, because we have plenty of kids with heritage from all over the world, we don't care which side of the family they're choosing from. It's all theirs. They're an heir to every part of their experience. So we've had Serbian samovars at our heirloom museums. We had an Air Force helmet at our heirloom museum. You see, we're attached to heirlooms not because of their value as a collectible mint-in box or because of the raw material behind it that we could melt down and use for something else. We're attached to heirlooms because they bring us back to a place, our grandmother's house or apartment, because of what they were used for, that we might be able to use them for the same thing, an old heirloom menorah, for example. It could remind us of a bygone era, the era when you had to chop the fish in the wooden bowl for an hour. This maybe the stories behind it. This came from this family member who brought it here and did this with it. And it may be that the heirlooms are attached to us and we're attached to them because of the people that they remind us of. It's not just the object, it's the person that brings you that connection. So I know we have some people who brought some heirlooms tonight, and I'm happy and excited to hear your story. This is like adult show and tell, so that we can hear why you found the heirloom you did and wanted to share it. But I wanted to share with you first 3 Kol Hadash heirlooms that we have here, and then 3 heirlooms that came directly from my office downstairs. So the first one is right in front of you. It's our menorah. This 7-candle menorah became part of Kol Hadash when I did. It was my gift to the congregation at my installation ceremony in November of 2004. I liked the idea of the Simcha and Suris candle lighting, but we didn't have a menorah. And so I thought, why not make this a mutual celebration and provide something that could be of use to the congregation. Now, 20 years on and a lot of moving around and carrying around in different car trunks and other places it's gone, you can see it's a little bit worse for wear. But it's a little bit like that line from The Velveteen Rabbit where the skin horse says, what it means to become real is that your hair gets worn off and your eyes are falling out, but then somebody really loves you. And this has seen a lot of love. And so I don't mind that its arms aren't quite even anymore and it's got a lot of ingrained wax in it. It doesn't matter. This is our congregational menorah. The second heirloom are the candlesticks. These candlesticks were a gift from Roger and Susan Adelson very early on in my tenure as well. I can't remember if it was for the installation event or some other event. But it was, again, to provide some beauty to the congregation and to give us some something beautiful to look at, even before the candles were lit. And the third is our Kiddush cup that we use every week. This was a gift to the congregation in memory of David Marcus, who was one of our founding members in, I believe, 2007. After he died, his family made the gift of the cup in memory of him, and so now every Shabbat that we use it, at least I, who know where it comes from, am reminded of David Marcus and his family, and so this is an heirloom for Kol Hadash. Now, the 3 things that came out of my office, the first is a little gold pin. This is a pin that was given to me by our Israeli rabbinic program at our very first ordination event in 2006. It took place at the Israel Museum. They gave these to each of the ordinees, the new humanistic rabbis in Israel, and also to myself and to Sherwin Wine, who was there. And so this is an important memento to me. Now it's almost 20 years since that first ordination ceremony, but it was really a special moment, and I treasure the pin that I have. The second is this. This holds paper clips and rubber bands. It's not particularly interesting what's in it, but the use of it is what's interesting. This was a clip holder that was on Sherwin Wine's desk for many, many years. He used it for his paper clips and so on, and after he died and we were going through what was in his office, none of his family wanted it, and I said, I would like this memento of him. And then I noticed on the bottom there were two initials, MR. And it turns out that this piece of art, this practical thing, was made by Marilyn Rowans, who was one of Sherwin-Williams' collaborators going back into the 60s and into the 70s, creating stories with him, running organizations with him. And she was the head of our International Institute when I started in our rabbinic program in the early 1990s. And I wound up working with her for a number of years. She died, I think, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. But I always treasured the fact that this came from Marilyn to Sherwin, and then from Sherwin to me. So again, it's the people as much as the object that's the connection. And the last one that came out of my office is this picture that's on the ground. I'll hold it up for those who are on viewing. This is a picture from our congregation's first high holiday services, even before I was here, in 2001. You can see our Rabbi Emeritus Daniel Friedman in the center, our music director emerita, Sarah Beatty in the middle as well, and all of the members of that founding choir of the congregation. The choir has always been a very important part of our community. As I was looking over these pictures, I noticed that there were some people on there that are no longer with us. I think 7 out of the 30 people in that picture are no longer part of the living. And some people have moved away, and some people are no longer members of Kol Hadash. But most of the people there are people that you might know. In fact, some of them are even in this room. And so if you want to see the ravages of time and compare what 24 years will do, then you can do that if you'd like. But this is one of those mementos of the congregation because it takes us back to that moment. And we have another wonderful picture from, I think, our 10th anniversary event when we were still at the Heller Nature Center that has a whole collection of people from all different generations, including members of my family that were there. And that one is also on the wall down by our offices. So some mementos are things that you leave to the side, you use once in a while, like a menorah that you only use for Hanukkah. Some of them are things you see every day, and you don't have to look at them every day, but they're available if you want to be reminded and feel that connection again. Those are just a few examples of mementos, heirlooms, things that I find meaningful, that I get to be with all the time. And I'd love for some of you to come forward and share your mementos as well. So I'm going to get the microphone. Make sure you're on camera. Yep. And if you'd like to come up and just be sure to speak in the mic and share, if you brought a memento, what the story is behind it, why you chose it, and why it's meaningful to you.
Okay, I just found these in my house. Years ago, and I'm talking many years ago, my father's first job, he was a shop teacher. I don't know if anyone remembers what a shop teacher is. They made stuff. And this says on it, "Happy birthday, Judy," because I'm a St. Patrick's Day birthday. So he made this pin for me. And this one, I don't know if you can see it, is a picture, it's a mirror. And on this side is my parents' wedding picture. And they were married in 1939. And the last thing I found was, I guess this was given to people who had their cleaning dropped off at my grandfather's cleaning store, and it says, "Never," it's a penny, "Never go broke, keep me and never go broke." And on the other side, it says, "Peterson Road Cleaners." So he had a cleaners on Peterson, it was now Peterson Avenue in Chicago. So these are the 3 things I found in my house. They don't have much value to anybody, but I still hang on to them. I don't know after I'm gone if anybody's going to want them, but I will keep them.
Thanks.
I'm the elephant in the room. We celebrated my dad's yahrzeit a little bit ago, and this was my dad's. World War II vet, 1943, I think. He was a landing craft operator. He would take 40, 50 Marines down to the beach, and only 2 or 3 would come back. And he was diddling around waiting for them to come back. And one of the natives from the area in the South Pacific came up to him and says, "You got some cigarettes?" 2 cigarettes. And this, I told Judy, this is the only elephant out of my 300 that you have to save, and we're going to pass it on, hopefully. And the 300, the other 299 are in a box down in the basement. So that's this.
Hi, I'm Marilyn Weisberg, and I do not have an object. What I have, I was carrying this around with me for many years, and it was given to my father by a cousin who came from Hungary after the war to Detroit. And it's a family tree that goes back to the late 1700s and traces my great-great-great-great-grandfather, Lieb Weisberger, from Rybnice. And I always looked at it. Our family, there's 223 people on this because Lieb had 6 children. One of them, David Weisberger, had like about 16 children. He had 2 wives. He had 3 kids with the first wife, and then he had like 13 with the second wife. Some of them passed away. My grandfather, my father's father, was the last in line of the children from the second wife. So for many years, and I looked at it, and this cousin named Willie Grosnan also did a narrative. He talked about who married whom, what cities they lived in, what kids they had, all the way back. He started in 1805 with David Weisberger. So I carried this around for so long, and then I was doing some genealogy research a few years ago, and I was looking up the Weisbergers, and I found that there was another Brian Wyattrack who was trying to find out about a great uncle of his, and it turns out his great-great-grandparents were, or great-great-great-grandparents were my great-grandparents, and I found out that Brian wrote this book called 4 Families, 2 Worlds, the Weisberger, Fisher, Joskowitz, and Wyattrack families in Eastern Europe and the United States. There are 40 pages in this book on the Weisbergers. There are pictures of cups. There are pictures of my grandfather's brother in a store on the Lower East Side. There are he's got charts of all the families, and Brian actually went to Europe. He hired a genealogist. He visited a number of these towns, like Rybnice, wherever it is today, and he met with some distant cousins. He went to the Mormons have a great genealogy center. He went there, and so I read this book, and it has stories, and it has pictures, and so now a lot of the people on that chart, they're not just names to me, they are people. And he talks about the people who stayed in Hungary who didn't survive, and the people who came to the United States. There was like a Weisberger club in Detroit, and I remember when I was little hearing about some of them, but it's just been amazing, and I'm still in touch. And today I went on the internet just looking up the Weisbergers, and I found another person named Jonah Silverstein who had also written a book tracing the history of the Jewish people, and he was also a distant cousin and I sent him an email saying, who are you? So he'd also written a book tracing the history of the Jews in Hungary, and specifically in that area where my great-great-great-great-grandfather was from. And so it's just very interesting. I have no mementos, but I have now this history that keeps expanding.
Hi, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ed Waxler. This object, which I did offer to the security guard to check over, and it passed his approval, is a walking stick. This walking stick was made by my father on September the 7th, 1940, almost 15 months to the day prior to the Pearl Harbor attack. World War II, of course, turned his life upside down. Regardless, this walking stick was obtained on my parents' honeymoon in the Dells in Wisconsin, and it's a branch off of a gnarly oak tree that he found that was straight. This branch wasn't gnarled, and on this stick, he carved, and it's hard to see, the words, "The Dells." And he brought it home, he varnished it, and it's been in our family ever since. I have a wall in my condominium with many pictures of family members and sentimental objects, and this walking stick is held on 2 brass hooks at the top of it all, near the ceiling. Many years later, I made this, or I had this white satin case made for it. It doesn't leave my home without being in this case. It wasn't my intention ever to dress it up like a tour or anything like that. But to me, this white case was just a symbol of the purity of what it meant to me. Now, what is that meaning to me? My dad loved being in the forest. My dad loved Wisconsin. Strange thing for the son of shtetl immigrants living on West Madison Street. But my dad, my parents, they loved Wisconsin. That love is imbued in this walking stick. I inherited it, and I went off and bought 10 acres of forest land in Wisconsin, primarily inhabited with gnarly oak. So that's the story of this. It's really old, from 1940. Pieces of it are falling off, but it's still neat, and it hasn't been out of my home in about 20 years or so. So,
Thank you.
there you have it.
My name is Lynn Miller, and I brought a matzah cover. That's family matzah cover. And my mom left it to me to use at our seders. And it has stains on it that remind me of the Passovers we spent together. And my daughter in 2nd grade with Mrs. Schur made a afikoman cover. And you can see that she has my spelling.
That's cute.
So we use it all the time. Thank you.
My father's mother was all about food and baking and cooking, and after she passed away right before the turn of the century. She was born right after the turn of the century. She's passed away, almost made it to 2000. As we cleaned up her house, all I wanted was the recipe box with all of the recipes in her hand or clipped from newspapers. So this is all of the recipes of all the wonderful things she made for so many years. And I scanned all the cards, turned them into a PDF so that everybody in the family could have the information that's on them. But I have the originals. When my mother's parents, my mother's mother, left her home, as I was going through something, I found this. It's too small to see. It's a souvenir booklet from the 1939 World's Fair in New York City. And what it has is a photograph of each area, each one of the exhibits at the World's Fair of 1939. And it was sitting in my grandfather's desk. So my grandmother's yard site name was read first. They're the errands, so they're always first. So I have a remembrance of all the food and a remembrance of the travels and adventures.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Now, you've got to stand here. This locket that Edie is wearing is something that I received as a gift from my parents when I was in high school a few years ago. And it has my initials on it and my parents' picture inside. We were looking at I guess it was some kind of a box one day, and I had a lot of old things in there, and Edie saw this, and she said, "What is this?" And I said, "Well, it's a locket my folks gave me when I was, I think, around 15 years old." And it still has the pictures of my parents, and it has my initials on it, and it has the Star of David on the front. And Eddie said, "Can I have it?" And I said, "Sure. I'm not wearing it right now," or I hadn't worn it for a long time, and she's been wearing it faithfully ever since.
So, yes, I would just add just a detail to the story that I was looking for something else in a drawer, don't have to say, and just stumbled on this box where I said, "Mom, what is this box? What is it doing in this drawer?" Didn't quite belong with the other things, in the drawer. And then I said, "Is it okay if I look in it?" And she said yes. And then you've just heard the rest of the story of all these wonderful memories. Not only this, and I'm really so pleased that I have it now and I can wear it and think of, and have the memory of the family. Okay.
So we've heard so many wonderful stories about connections to family in the past, things that we use or things that we may not use anymore, the accidental discoveries that become meaningful, the objects that are repurposed for something else, or that have been transformed, scanned in so that there's a permanent record, even if the paper is still precious to us. We understand that time passes, nothing stands still. But there's part of us that can go backwards in time. If we touch something from the past, we remember the people that gave it meaning for us, then we are connected to them in some meaningful way. Even if they are not here, their things are here. And we remember them through the things that were meaningful to them. We're in the season of Passover. Those dishes are coming out. The Seder plates are getting dusted off. The recipes are being resurrected and brought back to life. New memories are being made. New afikomen covers are being produced in Sunday school classrooms. It's a season of memory. In fact, Passover is based on remembering something that may never have happened, but we remember it anyways. We tell the story. We use the symbols. We connect to each other. We find family, friends, community. All of them are designed to create memories. The Seder itself is a sight and a smell and a sound and an experience. Many of our warm memories are around family and holidays, and so too with the celebration of Passover. And so I wish you a very warm and meaningful Passover season. Make memories and make Heirlooms more meaningful with one more year of loving experience.